There's no explicit hierarchy within these gods. We have a sun god, we have a rain god, we have a hunting god. We have more gods than we know. At least in the past, there were certainly ones that have now evaded our modern study of them. But it is interesting that there's no political structure. The Maya were then and are now a very communal people. And I find it interesting that the pantheon of gods reflects that attitude.
And welcome back to the Consciousness of the Way. I'm very excited to welcome to the podcast today a devotee, a person who has spent many decades exploring and understanding such an ancient art form. And quite frankly, I'm very excited to speak on anything historical based within the human timeline. And this gentleman has really mastered this state. I'd be a little amiss to say that you are, basically the everyday Indiana Jones, maybe tied up into a bow, perhaps. I don't know. It depends on how you look at things. I want to welcome to the podcast Ed Barnhart, and he is a 30-year veteran as an archaeologist and has many deep exploration into a lot of ancient sort of worlds of mastery from the Mayans. I mean, we could just go on here, but let's start with something basic. Welcome to the podcast, my dear friend.
Well, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
And so let's get down with this. Why don't we ask a basic question? What is the difference between archaeology and anthropology?
Oh, that's a pretty good question. A very nice basic way to start. Now, anthropology is the study of human beings. So archaeology is actually within anthropology. It's kind of a tool of anthropology. I have a somewhat unpopular opinion that archaeology itself is not a science. It is a technique through which we unearth things to then put science to. So archaeology is the excavating part and finding things part of anthropology. The second that we pull an artifact out of the ground and start thinking about what this thing is, now we've got our anthropologist hat on because we're talking about the study of humans.
Wow. So what is the node or the highest point of your career that you have become obsessed with that makes you all happy and hot and fuzzy inside? What is what is it?
Well, I've been blessed with a really interesting and cool career. I've done a lot of neat stuff. I really am I'm proud of my career and grateful for it. But I'd say, if there's anything that was really the bug that said, I got to keep doing this, it was when I was 25 years old, hunting through the jungles of Belize and actually found a Maya city where I thought it would be. And so I found a lost city at the age of 25. And really, I kind of felt like, well, if this isn't destiny calling, I don't know what is. I mean, if I could come up with this crazy dream about how to find not just, an artifact, but a city and pull it off at 25, well, maybe I have some talent in this and I should continue going.
Wow. Did it start with sort of an academic insight that brought you to that point? Because, I mean, most of these type of adventures have to be funded by someone of the same interest, I imagine.
Oh, yes. I was funded in that case by the University of Texas at Austin. I was kind of paying my way because I was a graduate student teaching younger students archaeology. I had already been on a number of digs, mostly in the United States, and they were pay jobs. There's a whole industry called contract archaeology in the United States. And we're basically just, ditch diggers who bring the things into the lab and become anthropologists then. But I had a good amount of experience doing just really nitty gritty excavations in Texas and other places. I had done some work in Belize before, and I had done a field school in Honduras, so I knew something of the Maya too. But it was the University of Texas that I was working for, and really, my inspiration was being an explorer. Since I was a kid, I wanted to be an explorer. And I used to be embarrassed to say this, but now I can admit that I was influenced by Indiana Jones. I was a teenager when that movie came out, and I thought, that's what I want to do. I'm going to go find a lost city. And then at 25, I did it for the University of Texas. I lived in their camp, and I brought students I was teaching at the time out to where I thought it would be, and we found it together.
Wow. I mean, do you ever pursue a lot of the spiritual sort of dogma of social media right now, where manifest this and manifest that? Would you consider that some level of manifestation?
Well, I'm not a fan of organized religions, but I do believe in spirituality, and I do believe that one's attitude and intentions is part of that larger spiritual world. I think that in a very basic way, thinking positive brings positive things your way, and thinking negative brings negative things your way. So if that's what you're talking about, yeah, I suppose I did. Just with all of my spirit, do my best to find a city, and perhaps that attitude that I can get it done was part of it happening.
Well, it kind of brings me to that point. I can tell you're a graduate of the School of Hard Knocks. You might have read The Secret before, perhaps. I don't know. That leads you to this place where, okay, there's a theme. You gravitated or were drawn to Mayan sort of experiences that clearly date back to what's the timeline of the oldest evidence in the human timeline of the Mayan culture? How far back are we going here?
Oh, we can take people that we would consider Maya to maybe as much as 1000 BCE. Conservative folks might put that number at more like 600 BCE, but a long time ago.
Wow. And so you're picking up all these little nuggets within the United States and also outside of the United States. There's a theme going on here through your career.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm on a learning journey, still am. I have learned a lot, but I believe I still have a lot more to learn, and a lot of things my life may end before I ever figure out any answers.
Well, it's just exciting. It's also very inspiring for anyone that has some desire to want to create their own path in their own life, that, you can get this spark of creativity and take it from an academic perspective and lead yourself into an actual productive, creative state where you're going on these digs, as you put it. You're getting your hands dirty, and you're able to have firsthand experience of this. It's not just a conflated book learned sort of experience.
Well, I do think that it's not my intelligence, it's not my experience or raw talent that got me to where I am today in this field. It's really been tenacity and persistence. Those are qualities that most of us have in one way or another, and I just happen to have a extra dose of them. I never quit. I am very persistent to the point of ill-advised sometimes. I go after what I want, and I put my whole heart into it. So I'd say tenacity, persistence, those are the qualities that got me through this road to where I am today. My father used to tell me a long time ago, you've got to, when you set a big goal for yourself, it's never a straight line to that goal. You just got to keep in sight of it. Sometimes you get pushed left, sometimes you get pushed right, sometimes you get pushed backwards. But if you just don't lose sight of it, one day you'll get there.
Sounds to be very poetic and an application to everything really in life, if you think about it. It's
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. Everything I needed to know, I learned in kindergarten kind of philosophy. There's a lot of basic stuff that is not about book learning or about wisdom. It's, about sticking with it.
applying thyself.
Of
Now,
course, I also feel very blessed that I kind of knew I wanted to do this with passion at an early age. I consider myself a rare person that knew what they wanted to do so early in life. A lot of us kind of float around looking for that inspiration for the better part of our lives, really. Some folks
yeah,
never find it.
yeah, it's a crossroads, right? I feel like we're coming from a pretty close to same generational awareness that the old experience was, if you put your mind to it, anything is possible, and furthermore, a little sweat and roll up your sleeves never hurt you to find more character in applying yourself. And that's a generational thing. I mean, the things that are going on today are kind of a little missed.
I agree. I was of that generation where, this our success is part and parcel to how hard we work. I think today's generation, I have a lot of kids in their 20s, and they tend to think that this whole speech about hard work gets the job done and gets you where you want to go is some kind of big scam, that like they're being told a lie, that if they just work their ass off, they'll be okay. Part of the reason that our work ethic is different is that they feel jaded and let down by this whole narrative that if you just work hard, you'll be okay. They
Yeah.
think, like, work hard for who? The oligarchy? Forget about it. I'm not playing their game.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're getting right down to the seed of the Matrix and how Neo is going to show us the way, whatever that way is. Maybe it's the way 126 experience, which we're on right now. It could be that way, or it could be some other way. I find that what's really interesting, that seems to be a continual thing that I notice you speak on a lot. We refer within Taoism, more ancient rituals, as an ordained priest in two lineages of Taoism. And I'm not a hard sell Bible basher, but I love the esoteric sort of nature of the metaphysics of Tao. So when we get into that stuff, it's really a poetic dance where you get the rhapsody of the words, and it leans you into feeling something that's beyond the construct of this reality. And you go through, ancient scripture to find this stuff. But we also lure people in with the magical construct. And within Taoist magic, they refer to deity magic, right? So deity magic, I'm not a fan of as a practitioner. I teach people how to have a relationship with the energy, not command it. But hey, look, everyone says tomato and tomato in their own way. There is a deity that you've come across that you speak of within the Maya history. Tell us more about that.
Did you say deity?
Yeah, you were talking about deities at some point. Yes.
Okay, well, Maya deities, sure. There's they have a pantheon. There's Buddhism doesn't really, I mean, Buddha, but he's not even really a deity. It's a totally different scenario. The Maya are much more like the ancient Greeks in that they had a pantheon of deities, unlike Christianity or the religions of Asia. There's a pantheon, and unlike the Greeks, the pantheon does not have a clear ruler. There is no Maya Zeus. Now, there's a sun god who's pretty important. There's this guy named Itzamna, who's kind of a god of royal magic. And he oftentimes looks like he's running things, but there's no explicit hierarchy within these gods. We have a sun god, we have a rain god, we have a hunting god. We have more gods than we know. At least in the past, there were certainly ones that have now evaded our modern study of them. But it is interesting that there's no political structure. The Maya were then and are now a very communal people. And I find it interesting that the pantheon of gods reflects that attitude. Even in my work with modern Maya people today, like take the Palenque project, for example. 3 years, I had a crew of machete guys that would cut in front of me to go look for buildings together. And I really wanted one of them to be the foreman, so I didn't have to talk to everybody all the time. They would not take that foreman job. They did not like being the boss of everybody else. They were part of a crew, and it caused social friction for somebody to be the boss for too long. So what I ended up having to do was say, okay, Rogelio, you're my guy to talk to this week. Manuel, I'll talk to you next week. I'll revolve this position of coordinating everybody so you don't look like you're trying to be the boss of them. The Maya pantheon seemed to have worked very much the same way. And I do think, just now this is kind of non sequitur, but the classic period of the Maya is what I call the Age of Kings, where a single family dynasty rolls out generation after generation of king who is, born to rule. That lasts about 400 years. And when the Maya civilization really collapses, one of the things you see when it picks itself back up is no more kings. You see councils, you see heads of councils, but again, those positions revolve. Someone's not the king for the whole time or the leader for the whole time. It's councils with leaders that have revolving positions. So I think that part of the reason that Maya society collapsed around 800 AD is that they decided they had gone astray, that they are now no longer the thing that the pantheon of gods was modeling, and that what they really needed was to kick these kings out. And I think it was a reflection of their religion and the way their deities work together.
Yeah, it seems like very much like the ancient path of Taoism is similar in its nature, and then it's sort of its chokehold within the culture today being sort of like manipulated by a communist sort of dictatorship over collectively, very clearly, at least over the last 100 years. And of course, over the 7 emperors that China exhibited as being the exalted ones, the highest point of command over the sovereignty of the country. I mean, that goes in and out all the time. But truthfully, we go right back to about 6000 BC when we start with, oracle bone reading and pictographs, where we were getting a very clear logging and transcription of history with a guy we call the Yellow Emperor. And so he's really got a lot of credit for the foundation of Chinese culture as we know it today. And furthermore, was one of the teachers that started to craft what I teach as Taoist alchemy today. That internal connection came from the Yellow Emperor's connection with the universe, and that goes right into another rabbit hole of channeling and what is channeling, what does it all mean? Generally speaking, that's the theme and the consensus of how we accumulated the thousands of Taoist canons that are logged as the history of Taoism, Chinese culture. It all reverts back to this intimate relationship that the Taoist seeker has with the universe. And so when you speak of the Maya and their sort of pantheon of different sort of gods, we refer to that within Taoism as just another facet of the diamond of perfection. We refer to a relationship with a god as a dialogue to the monologue. So the monologue we refer to as the void, the mother, the primordial mother, which is basically the animation to everything. And then you basically go down the path from the mother to consciousness. Consciousness controls the spirit controls the energy controls the body. This metaphysical sort of understanding helps everything sort of fall into place, but finding the true center point, which then dissolves to nothing, is sort of deconstructing everything into contracting and expanding. That's it. Contracting and expanding. That's the extent of the myth behind the mystical path of Taoist alchemy. But with that, we have gods for everything also. But it's very clear that it's, the god for the kitchen, the god for the garden, the god. Oh, yeah. Immortals. Personally, within my own hierarchy, the highest point is the primordial mother. And the primordial mother then created what we call the three pure ones that are the keepers of the creation of the cosmos. And when we look at everything, it's a contracting and expanding experience. So we refer to that as the great bellows. So everything is contracting and expanding. So from that, you have creation, completion, and then rebirth. The trilogy is set forth in the seeker's understanding of how this all works from the metaphysics perspective, from understanding that great nature. And of course, the three pure ones, one is the keeper of the light, one is the keeper of the information, the other one is the keeper of the energy. And as they collectively came together, that trilogy, that trinity refers to the creation of the cosmos. And so it's like a Shazam moment. It just comes together at one point and boom, you would refer to this as the Big Bang, perhaps. This understanding is where the mother shows herself through the inhalation and exhalation of the body. And that ancient art form we've referred to as the embryosis of that breath, and we capture it and then we form life. So she inhales and creation is born, that type of stuff. But yeah, I appreciate that because
there's a breath part of the Maya stuff too. Gosh, I know so little about Taoism. You've just taught me so much. I'm embarrassed to say that I thought that Taoism was more part of the Hindu Buddhist kind of sphere, but it sounds like it's very much apart from that. It's its own thing. Wow, I'm embarrassed that I knew so little about it. I tend to study the religions of the place that I go do archaeology, so I guess I just haven't done anything in China. But I'd like to know more about that. So there's a pantheon too, huh?
Yeah.
Does the creation story say how they were made?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm actually just releasing a book specifically going through that pantheon because the literature is very limited. Even when you go to my monasteries in China, they're very secretive about releasing the details of these particular, what many people call them deities. Now, a deity would sort of like infer that maybe it's sort of some captured sort of little slave that like a genie in a bottle, you cast your spells on and the deity creates things. Well, furthermore, there's an imbuing of the spirit and energy of all the pantheons, all the immortal teachers. And we have over 171 of them within the Taoist teaching that I share. And so it's all an iteration of the collective. So the symbiosis is realizing that we are dealing with this yin and yang energy, and ultimately you want to be able to merge the two through the alchemical process, then revealing what we refer to as the pulse, which is the mother, the animation of everything. Then you return back to the void. So you now detach and attach as all things. So no longer is the personality, identity, the very construct, thoughts, feelings, and emotions are just another distraction. You will feel into something and then fall backwards into everything, and realizing that you're all things and nothing at the same time, which is a paradox that people love to get their heads screwed by. And my students are like, Jifu, I'm still learning. Of course you are. That's okay. You're remembering who you are. This remembrance is that ability to realize that the emptiness is actually fullness. But this is an alchemical process that has to be recognized from a vibratory, frequential, and ultimately holding resonance. And that's why the alchemy is so exciting, because you show yourself evidence and then return to nothing.
When you say alchemy, do you mean that word in the traditional sense, like transmuting one element into another?
Yes. The good old fashioned Jesus turned water into wine, lead into gold. The philosopher's stone is something that was more, abused back in the 1600s, 1500s on the western side of the globe as an offering of something that could go beyond the dogma of organized religion, that I can take charge of myself and my own path. And really, Taoism is gnosis. It's like know thyself. It's return to thyself. But through that, there is a process. There is a method to the madness. To remember, you must forget. To forget, you must remember. And so everyone gets caught up in it. But as you continually practice and cultivate, the side effects are, the wizardry and the Harry Potter experiences that are all the experiences, value set, rule set, understanding. And then as you continue to ascend or basically embody, you let go of all that. It's of no value. It's of no relevance, as the stress, the adaptation, and then the expansion is part of the journey of a Taoist, is to return to selflessness and servitude that you cannot fight. You do not have to struggle with. It just is what it is. Yet on that path, you will have the magical, mystical experiences that are supernatural, paranormal, all that kind of good stuff. And I don't mind teaching people that. That's part of the alchemy, is being able to have absolute dominion, imperium over this now moment. We call it the fabric of reality, and you play with it like Spidey. As you create a density within that energy, you're able to move it around like an icon on a computer screen. And then you get all this crazy stuff like Bruce Lee talking about the 1-inch punch. And quite frankly, he went deeper into it with his Taoist teacher. And, you keep forming it, but you must not spiritual bypass this stuff. You need to realize that feeling into the body is part of the growth and expansion. You must root yourself in the ground, own the flesh, and then now actualize and alchemize what is the energy potential.
What's the goal? Is it serenity? Is it power? Is it harmonizing with the world?
Harmony, and actually what we call, and not a plug, but I just finished my book, Immortality Crystallized in the Material. That is the alchemical process that returns you to fullness, wholeness. That's what it is. And so you have this path of remembrance, but ultimately the purpose of Taoist alchemy is to raise the frequency of humanity and its awareness of the superpower of the human condition to the human beingness, which does not require your participation. So the ultimate is, you are no longer run by the programs. The default reveals itself as an eternal, immortal, forever self that cannot be created or destroyed. This is what the primordial mother is. And, that darkness can be light at will, or light can be darkness at will. And then you fundamentally fall back into duality. That is the crux of finding thyself, knowing thyself, is that you are all things and nothing at the same time. The ultimate purpose is to be the ambassador to planet Earth and raise the conscious collective. That is the purpose of the alchemy. And, even whenever I left each monastery, the path was take the Tao Te Ching and teach the world of the true nature of reality. And we refer to that as the magical register. And so that we go deep and deep into. And, it's an exciting path because it draws your attention, intention. You need to start somewhere. And to find thyself is to lose thyself. Yet it's a paradox until otherwise noted. Until you truly are able to experience it It's nothing more than talking heads, religion, dogma, identity, no identity, avatars, archons, whatever you want to define it as. You're having a struggle with knowing that the present moment is really the only thing that exists. And that comes from that alchemy. And of course, the side effects of the alchemy are, physical healing, manifestation, magic, all that kind of good, groovy stuff that people want to run off and oh my goodness, I can't believe it. I just got a fundamental TCM treatment from an acupuncturist, and all my pain disappeared. And I mean, this is sort of futile, infantile stuff. Yet you got a grassroots level that people have to feel into something. But high level alchemy and magic goes way beyond that. I mean, we talk about real crafting Harry Potter shit. Like, yeah, okay, now we're getting down with it. And it seems impossible, yet it is until it isn't. So you know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. And it comes from that cultivational practice. But yeah, I mean, many people will refer to what we experience as acknowledging that immortality, that eternal self. Some cultures would refer to that as Brahman, cosmic consciousness, emptiness, stillness, wholeness. There's a myriad of different ways you can go, in any direction. Yet it's not the thing with alchemy for Taoism is that it's evidence-based, which it's not some fleeting moment where just still the mind, sit back and relax. If it was that easy, everyone would be doing it. So to make it impossible, to make it basically entry-level stuff, you've got to feel into something to find nothing. And it won't make sense to you until you arrive there. So the alchemy is a method that is very clearly set out within the metaphysics. And people get really excited about it because they've been running around with what we call a bite of the spiritual dragon. Oh, I heard grandma, I had a vivid dream, I'm lucid, I can read people's auras and blah, 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 I can channel God. That's fantastic. And then they're amiss. They're like, I can't live my life. I'm so traumatized by this. My nervous system is broken. I feel like everything is distorted because you're half cooked. You're not completely baked. You have to condition yourself. Regardless of how you perceive it, there is a creation, completion, and then rebirth. And without it, you're going to be left.
Why are we born with an inability to connect with this?
Right. People ask that question. I mean, it's like, Jifu, why? Why am I here? And my answer is, why not? And people are like, hang on, that doesn't help me. I mean, I need to feel something. And that's part of what we refer to as the human condition, right? The human condition is met with struggles and disappointment and suffering because, as you said at the beginning of this podcast, is your glass half empty or full? You positive vibes repeat positive vibes, negative vibes repeat negative vibes. But generally in purpose of life, there is this game that you're experiencing. It's like you always want to come. Imagine this. Walk to a door and you reach to open the door handle and you open the door, you walk through the door. I'll give you $1 million if you are not compelled to close that door. It's part of the incessant construct of the human condition. What you start, you must complete. And when you go deeper on that understanding, all of a sudden, this is the very, effect of contracting and expanding, that it always comes to a completion. And then you want to, your spark of divinity creates more curiosity. You'll finish a dig and then you want the next one. It's part of the excitement of the exploration and finding something that would seem impossible, and you find it, and then that just excites you. It energizes you for that next node of awareness. You're crafting your own consciousness through these experiences, regardless of how someone would contort it with a spiritual mumbo jumbo explanation. This is part of what we do. And when you get right down to a subatomic particle all the way up to creation, people are looking for so much more. I channel my teacher Lao-Tzu, I have for over 30 years. And, his answer would be this. Imagine you're like a grain of sand asking the beach, what are we doing today? Fall back into the beach and be realized. And they're like, but I need purpose. I'm individual. You can't fool me. You are me, I am you. We are whole. The lie is that you believe you're separated. The lie is that you believe that you cannot create from this moment anything that you desire, because you're still hearing that dogma in the back of your mind that was conditioned in a past life or as a child, that what you take you must put back because there is a finite amount. There's no such thing. That's where people go to the finite mind, and they're absolutely disappointed, because once you supercharge it with the intellect and you collide the two, now your intellect is on steroids. Now you can make some valuable decisions that are going to end in what we refer to as wu-wei. Effortless action, effortless effort. It's serendipitous, it's synchronistic. And furthermore, it will be a constant. That's the eternal immortal self. You are constant. You are not diminished. You're not impermanent. The permanency comes from that solidification, that codifying of the alchemy. That's when magic starts taking place. And all of a sudden, the more your mind asks questions, the more and more you're further away from the truth. And the less and less your desire or need to complete it realizes you're already arrived.
Wow. You know, in today's modern world, I think a lot of people are very science-based. You know, even the words that you just used to describe it to me employed the words of science to convey your point. Frequency, mode, even duality is binary code. But what's funny about what I think is funny is that so many people will say, you know, science is a real way of investigating our world. These religions, they're faith. But actually, in reality, the people that believe in science believe in it as faithfully and blindly as people do in organized religion. We just traded frocks for lab coats. Everybody in the scientific community believes in DNA and our ability to analyze it. But how many people can actually sequence DNA? How many people that believe that that's what's going on have actually been in a lab and sequenced DNA? Almost none of them. So that is a faith-based activity. I think about, when you talk about the loftier concepts of the universe, I was amused about, it's probably like 2 decades ago now, that physics started saying, to our amazement, everything is moving away from each other at a constant rate of speed. So that the universe is expanding in every direction, and that everything in the universe is expanding away from everything else at a constant speed. That is really hard to wrap your mind around. And yet, our scientific journals are full of this as canon knowledge. But really, guys like me are just taking that on faith. And then I turn around for the Maya and for the people of Mesoamerica, there's this concept, and I know that you just talked about it too. I've seen it in Buddhism, the concept of the center, that everything is the center, that you can become the center, that everywhere is the center. That, from a scientific point of view, makes no sense. I mean, it seems to defy the definition of center. And yet, for years, I've been looking at these things archaeologically and seeing that when they built a city, they conceptualized it as the center of the universe. A place, Tolan, place of tall reeds, is the center of the universe. I look over to Buddhism and Hinduism, and they do that center thing too. It's Mount Meru, and it's the center of the universe, and it points up and down, and it's the center. But all of the places in Cambodia that I study, like Angkor, they are making models of Meru, and they are making each one of those temples in and of itself the center of the universe. So, all of a sudden, late to the game, physics seems to be saying That in terms of everything moving away from each other at a constant rate of speed, isn't that another way of saying everywhere is the center? Are they finally saying what ancient religions have been saying forever?
Yeah, now I would have to agree. And I mean, ultimately, when you are actualized as the center, that's when the center disappears. So the true arriving to arrive and never arrive again, and return again, and continually cycle the creation and birth and rebirth. This is part of accepting that now moment, right? And for something as ancient, we call it primordial breathing, and the embryonic breathing is activating something that goes beyond the body. So you're now breathing from consciousness. You're not breathing from the flesh. So that means that, the longest time I've held my breath was 17 minutes, and I'm far from brain dead. And that's with an action. That's with feeling into the body and movement, which would clearly consume whatever oxygen was left that is being dispersed, and ultimately I would die in lack of, was beyond that, because we refer to this as bone breathing that goes way deeper. And it's just a cultivational path. The end is the same, contract and expand. And it's like, oh, well, okay, so now what? Well, your mission, if you choose to accept it, Ethan Hunt, is to find that center point and then fall back into it and realize there's nothing and everything at the same time. And so that just is a head screw, because people expect purpose, completion, satisfaction. And that's completely fine. You can stay there and you can idolize an identity of such that you are the alchemist, you're a clairvoyant, a channel, a medium, a healer, whatever you choose to define what it is that you're experiencing right now. To be in that state of nothing requires to be divested of everything. So it's like I just can't deal. That's why alchemy is so powerful, because it goes from, if you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you are feeling. So the second the feeling arises, you can put a stop to that and fall back into the void. And we're no longer entertaining a thought, feeling, or emotion. You take it in reverse. The feeling then enters into the emotion and then acquires a thought. And in reverse, a thought evokes an emotion and then creates a feeling. And so once you have a feeling, no matter what it is, realizing that it is of nothing but a distortion of the body, which is a tuning fork, fall back into the stillness, the emptiness, the void, the abyss. However people say it, yet I want to see it. Show me. I'm a Pepsi challenge guy from the 80s. I'll take the taste test, the Pepsi challenge with anybody, because what it comes down to is show me. To codify, to create a sense of knowing to not know anything, you must complete it. So that's why I find that people pursue alchemy, or Taoist alchemy, more than anything else, because you're having experiential moments that are being validated. There's evidence there. And, the language it's poetic. Like, we use the rhapsody of the linguistics to create this intimate relationship with the alchemist and the universe, ultimately, which is an iteration of the mother. And then you get down with the get down. And ultimately, that return to that pulse, that magnetism, that magnetic self that is never created or destroyed, eternal, immortal, forever, is part of that excitement. And then, of course, nothing moves the needle. And so I like to refer to my teaching as Big Trouble in Little China meets Last Airbender, and they had a baby.
I love your pop culture references.
Right. People love it. I mean, people love it. It's like, that's the whole point. You want to be curious. You want to be inspired to create, because that's it. Like the way.
Now, let me ask. I'm a passionate person. I like to create. I like to move around. I like to be active. The way you describe this moment that they arrive at, it's nothingness. It's emotionless. It's what's the value of that? I mean, I could only sit in that state for maybe 5 minutes, and then I'd need to get on to something.
Well, you see, what happens is the value is that you can have your cake and eat it, because Nigong, which is internal power, which is what I teach people, is grass rooted in what we call Nidan, which is the internal alchemy. And once that's possible, you give the universe a steroids version of multitasking, where you can have your cake and eat it. You can enjoy your personality, and you can also acquire the present moment as nothing and witness miracles, manifestations. However, this is the part where people get deluded. You're abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite, and that's shown through the alchemy. And so immortality is shown through how you commandeer the 50 trillion cells that you look back at you in the mirror as your flesh and blood is part of the mastery. Because once you arrive, you can sit as nothing or be as everything. That's the beingness that is sort of like the ascended state from concept, consciousness, knowing, unconscious knowing, and then being with all things. As being, as everything, you're also nothing. But to acquire that is the feeling. So your mind is void. There is no distortion. There's no definition. There's nothing. Yet, as I referred to it before, you can have your cake and eat it. I love riding my side-by-side in the desert at 100 miles an hour. I eat chocolate bonbons, and I'm still freaking paying that ridiculous Netflix subscription. That is not required. My participation is not required in this mastery of returning to the void. Yet you can move in and out of anything at will, from a grain of sand to the universe, to the sun, to beyond the veil of what you perceive as a dimension or a realm. And that is through that primordial breath. And what we do is we accumulate that as the riches. All the identity disappears. You realize that you're attached to that breath as you are the mother. So you're not calling on your angels or your teachers or your this or that. As the mother, your breath will commandeer this experience. And your thoughts that you think are thoughts of yours disappear. And basically, serendipitous, synchronistic experiences happen at will. And of course, then you can fall back into emptiness if you choose to, which is just now. And it doesn't require anything.
So it goes back to 6,000 BC, did you say?
Yes.
Are those the earliest indications of Taoism?
That's the earliest on paper from a human timeline.
You know, I have a theory that the peoples of the Americas in general came across with a very primordial version of some kind of religion, and then it flowered into different versions of it over a 10,000 or more year period of time. And I've always felt like trying to use Christianity to explain the religions of the Americas is a totally wrong model, and that logically speaking, the religions of Asia would be a much better fit. But I've been focused on Buddhism and Hinduism, and I really have not looked at Taoism enough to look for parallels. I see things like one of the core elements is ancestor worship across the Americas. Now, is there any semblance of ancestor worship in Taoism?
Well, it's more timelines and nodes of information that's gathered, and it always returns back to that direct source of the intimate relationship with
how do they venerate their dead? How do you venerate your dead?
Right. Well, I mean, let's be very clear. When you say, for example, you at face value, you glance over to Buddhism and Taoism and go, oh, yeah, they're kind of the same. Eastern philosophy, maybe a smattering of some type of religion. If I've got 20 or 30 friends that are monastic monks of Buddhism.
Clearly my ignorance, apologies.
Yeah, and so there's variables of everything. Just like you say tomato, I say tomato. We can speak that word in so many different ways. It's the same thing with Buddhism, but conceptually and a consensus of what the fundamental message is like. I explain it like this: Buddhism is like a pile of shit covered in diamonds, and you just look for another diamond, you pull it off, and you find more shit. It's what they call the dukkha, that they're looking for the suffering. And that's just the path of the monastic monks that I'm familiar with. You can have another variable of that may lean towards something that won't seem so sad and miserable as mundane life. And furthermore, when you look at Taoism, it's very simple. Taoism is a pile of diamonds covered in shit. You take off some more shit, you find another diamond. It's a good day to be you. It's good to be me. And that fundamentally refers back to what your understanding of reality that you mentioned earlier in the podcast. Good equals good, bad equals bad. I mean, physics, again, is a really poor version of understanding that, to return to nothing, you become everything and then nothing again, which is just a head screw and that's why the alchemy is so important, to check off these things and then return back to it through a method that doesn't make you just have a psychotic episode and get checked into a local, facility for further examination, which is where most of these things go. I mean, when I think about it, 30 years ago, I started teaching alchemy over 30 years ago. Listen, people would come to me with psychotic breaks, and they would be referred to as potentially identified as a schizophrenic or a bipolar or anything. Just throw one out there. And I would give them what in ancient teachings of training, we refer to it as an exorcism. I would exercise the energy, and all of a sudden they have dominion over themselves, and the voices in their head no longer echo this monotone ting that is uncontrollable. They have the ability to feel into it and then move the energy in any which way they choose to. It's part of that mastery. Now, today, that same person may wake up and say and realize they're channeling the Palladians, open up a YouTube channel and get 100,000 followers. It's a different time that we're in. Yet people need to understand, by bypassing the fundamental building blocks of your own self-actualization will be problematic. And that's why I always end up with people on my doorstep. I was a healer, I'm a channeler, I'm a guru, I'm a this, I'm a that. And they burn their life force, which is lighting the candle at both ends. And they don't master the fact that they are this now moment, that the primordial mother is forever. And so they sacrifice with their attention, intention, their humanness, and their mortality shows itself. And most healers, if they're light workers or whatever, they start off with a bang. They realize they can heal people and move energy and all that. And before you know it, in their 40s and 50s, they're dead as a doornail, because they don't understand how to master that alchemy, that you never, ever siphon from yourself. You never have to. But again, they get stuck in the psyche. And what happens is they become inverted. So this initiation of intuitive states are not balanced with the intellect, making it a whole cooked pie. The pie's half cooked, and then you'll see it physically. You'll see their distortion and destruction. They may be the best psychic in town, and my goodness, they can tell me my grandma's around, and I've had 100 readings, and I get healings, but they're just, the old expression, selling their soul incrementally, siphoning off the top, attempting to replenish, and they just become more and more exhausted, and their body shows it to them, and ultimately they move on. And that's not part of Taoist alchemy. Taoist alchemy is, as I put it before the plug, immortality crystallized in the material, that you are able to alter material at will through that alchemical process. That's the exciting part. I mean, some of the most epic adventures I've had are in the bowels of Chinatown, where you walk through a wall and literally I'll go into an antique store in San Francisco and be met with antiques that are thousands of years old, that this guy's been hoarding since he came over and migrated back in the 60s or 50s. And he's been hoarding these antiques that were stolen from some ancient temple that should never have been stolen. But with that, he holds, we can go into the ether and what that might mean from a spirit type of aspect. That's for another day. But they're holding this fundamental curse that plagues their ability to generate this thing called money from it. And in Chinatown, I came across 3 terracotta warriors straight off the boat that this guy had in a false
And you
wall.
feel those are giving that person bad luck?
Well, he had it in a false wall. His literally a shop. He could open the wall up and, imagine the shop's density is this much. At face value, you can't see it. He would literally open the wall up that would take up most of the space of the shop. And he had these 3 gems hidden in the back. I could feel the juice. I'm like, what's going on here? And he's like, oh, let me show you. And so that, because it was a reluctance, and their purpose was when they were codified and turned to stone as the 10,000 soldiers that are guarding that emperor, that was the purpose. And if you notice, every single one of them has a different expression. They're not the same. As if someone had taken some beyond natural ability and supernatural cause and effect within this material, changed the basis of what they were constructed of, not flesh and blood. And you see that. And so, yeah, I mean, I could go on and on and on.
Those are amazing. The terracotta warriors. I asked that question again, thinking about this whole spirituality and ancestors thing. Mm-hmm. Modern Maya people, curanderos, who are healers, will have a table in front of them or a cloth with some of the objects of their craft. But invariably, some of them are very old artifacts. And as they explain it, those are kind of touchstones to bring the spirits of their ancestors to the table, literally to the table, to help do this diagnosis or help or advice, whatever it is. And so I don't know, is it similar to your conception that things that were touched by many generations before can be touchstones to those spirits?
Oh, yeah, absolutely imbued. I mean, more technically, shout out to any parapsychologist friends, you'd call that psychometry. You get into the imbued state, and with this harnessing of what we call the substance, the fajun, you are imprinting deep within the core of that object into something that is now brings life. And it has a spirit, it has a center, it has an aura, it has an energetic profile. And so when you're harnessing a deity, we refer back to that, the deities don't exist within my temple. I have statues that are imbued from the spirit and energy of the immortal, and they are fundamentally different in every shape, way, or form. Every 171 of them have their own profile and depth and density and energy expression. And part of developing what we call the skills, the barometer, we develop what we call body dowsing. And so you can feel into anything at will, and you use a technical term brought back in the 1800s to identify this feeling that you feel through the body. Ideomotor response is part of what some people would refer to as, dowsing, tarot cards, Ouija boards, dowsing, tuning forks. All these types of things are just a way to harness your divine self that emanates from the body into a tool that gives you information and understanding. A pendulum is a classic one, right? You can hold that pendulum, and with that present moment, we refer to it as your attention intention. You then forge and activate what we call the Shen, the spirit body is now present in the material. And then you will get direct information emanating through the tool, being the pendulum. And so you will also get information that will start in the mind, and you'll start to see it as vivid as you see it in your third eye, or with your eyes closed. You can see it with your eyes open, and that's just a conditioning. Once again, a conditioning. And of course, that pendulum will give you very clear information. And
but it's the pendulum activating a ability within yourself.
Yeah, you're always,
it's a catalyst.
Yeah, oh yeah, you're always transmitting information, and that's why I always tell people, grassroots, basement level stuff. You need to understand the relationship between conscious and unconscious, and something as infantile as hypnosis. You should understand how that works, because you instantly evoke a state of awareness that everyone has the ability to do. So somnambulistic states are something that are more coined to a 2 percentile scenario back, say, 5 years ago, when someone would be able to evoke a gamma brainwave that was supposedly the holy grail of brainwaves, merging the conscious and unconscious, having the ability to access alpha, theta, delta, altering the tapestry of the mind. So things that are developed over your childhood, you can then enter into and erase and reprogram at will. This type of understanding is very grassroots stuff. The stuff that I teach, you want to have the fundamentals, then you want to be able to tune into what we call the source, that goes beyond the flesh, beyond the energy, beyond the spirit. And then you are really aware of consciousness and ultimately the mother. And so then you do, party tricks where you're, reading people's state of awareness and information that couldn't possibly been gathered or garnered from any way other than this now moment. And it freaks people out, but it also gives them a click of consciousness. And that's part of helping people find themselves and go back, is through all this, mysterious, mystical, esoterica that we use through this Harry Potter experience. And that primordial stuff becomes really clear. Doing silly things like, pulling my arm up and drawing a stake through it and pulling it out again, a skewer, is a party trick that I've been doing for years. You see no entry or exit point, and you're like, how did you do that? It's all got to do with how you desensitize the flesh. You activate anesthesia within the body, and your ability to devoid or dissolve that pain signal, what we will refer to as a gnosis, a node signal, where that type of signal comes back to the brain. We're just bypassing all that stuff. That's part of the alchemy. That's the excitement. All this stuff goes deeper into telekinesis, pyrokinesis, all this kind of stuff. I find it problematic when people become obsessed with one thing. It's like clicking off a list. As you continually adapt and expand, you should not be distracted with the baubles. I'll know when someone's truly on their path of truly returning to themselves, which is wholeness, which is the void, which is nothing at the same time. On that path, you're the way to the wizard. You're gonna pick these things up, and they're exciting, and they should be, because that's sparking that divine curiosity within the heart, and you want to continue that. Yet don't be deluded or lured by that as being the absolute, because it is not. The absolute is when you return to nothing. And so many people love this stuff. They go,
oh, well, thank you so much for enlightening me on all this. I clearly have a lot to learn about Taoism. Maybe I'll buy your book.
Yeah. I'll send you a couple of. And this is the fun part. My mother was watching me write a 300-page book as I transcribe it from Lao-Tzu, and I did 4 books in the last 3 days. And that's just transcribing the information into paragraphs and sentences. And when you read it, it's your poetic right. And when you read it, you'll be like, holy crap, as referred to the rhapsody and the remedy. The rhapsody will take charge of you. You will feel it. It's a visceral, kinesthetic, somatic thing. And it is undeniable. You're like, I don't even want to wrap my brain. How the hell did he even write this stuff? And when my mother was witnessing and my wife witnessed it, it just comes straight out. That's where you attune yourself and you remember who you are. Lao-Tzu, I see him as clear as I see you. I hear him as clear as I hear you. And as Crockett and Tubbs would say, I ain't 3 cents short of $1 and didn't leave my groceries at the meat market. Homage to the old Miami Vice. I got to love it. But the truth is, I'm completely grounded and attuned. And that information is just sitting there in the ether that would be conceptual for most people.
There's a Lao Tzu quote that I think I like. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's something like to be loved gives you strength, but to love gives you bravery, something like that. Something, do you remember that quote? Is that
Well, there's so much distortion on what Lao Tzu quotes or doesn't quote. If it doesn't come back to the center point of unconditional love, which is as far as that scripture really got, even though it was leaning more into the nothingness. There's many prompts throughout the 81 verses. We refer to 81 incantations. Most people translate it and distort it to their own agenda, which normally sits in fear and loathing and introspective processes, which is so far removed from where you're going.
but it's really about love, huh?
Yeah.
I enjoy that. I think in the end that is a human quality that crosses all civilizations and all religions. It's well, we're all really looking for is love, isn't it? To be part of it, to generate it, to receive it.
Well, yeah, love is one facet of the diamond. I would say that if you stay there, you will be missing out. Yeah, that's great. That's a starting
I don't
point.
know. I'll linger in love for as long as I can.
Well, it's the hallmark version of distortion, right? It's like when you are truly at that state of unconditional, that's what you are. You're in servitude and selflessness. Everything, everywhere you see is perfection. There's nothing incomplete. There's nothing that is corrupted. Everything is whole.
I get you. The kind of love goggles that love puts on your eyes about the rest of the world.
It's that's how you get an entry level for anyone's curiosity. We normally use that spark. It starts with the spark of divinity, which is desire. Desire turns into inquiry. Inquiry then fans the flames of contemplation. Contemplation, we then nurture curiosity. Curiosity blossoms belief. There you have the crossroad. That's where the crossroad comes in, where most people fall into the bottomless pit of self-discovery and the idea that everything is a thought, feeling, and emotion. And then you get distracted. But once you, as an experiencer, find that as a wholeness, then you jump over into that knowing that then dissolves back into nothing. And that's just part of the whole journey. I mean, that's the exciting part. I mean, why do we have these bodies? Why not? Because it's here to experience this incredible miracle we call the human condition, or more human beingness, which is part of that labyrinth. From your Sherlock to your Watson, you find it within that state. And then, of course, you let it go, let it be free, let it return from where it came. But again, all these different versions, as you said, these are all just different versions, as physics, as numbers, as geometry, paths of religion, belief systems, cultivational practice. I always remind people, when you use Taoist alchemy and you have arrived at that state, you will not identify as anything. Taoist alchemy will disappear, and so will you. You will realize that this is the only thing that is the absolute truth, is this very moment that refers back to the breath. And so when you harness that, it all becomes realized. But people have been bastardizing and abusing and literally raping that word breath for so long. It's been distorted and beaten down, and they add breath and work. And then we go, well, we know where we're going with that. I mean, any mastered NLPer will be like, well, that word as a linguistic tool of manipulation is going to keep you in your rat in the wheel. You're going to keep going over and over the same shit. And that's the purpose of it. So, when you get into something as fundamental and basic as hypnosis, when you can erase someone's name and give them a state of bliss and ecstasy in the same second, I'm using resonance. I'm not actually evoking it from a linguistic perspective where I'm going, let me suggest something to you and you can consider that. No, I'm not asking you. I'm emanating a resonance that people fall into, that all of a sudden they freak out because I'm not using some dialogue I just emanate the resonance. It's like the resonance precedes you, just as you form a communion with a local guru, or someone goes to see, Dalai Lama or the Pope or whatever. There's a resonance that is being emanated from that connection, and they're the catalyst and tuning fork that people basically, like the Pied Piper, they fall into that resonance. And it doesn't require any action, words, or anything else. It's just your default. And that's what the alchemy is for, is to precede that, because, human body is very limited. It's the impermanence of that is diminished. It will collapse and fall back on itself. It is not forever. You are forever. You are eternal. And when that arrives, as you're knowing, as you fall back into nothing, then you can emanate this frequency, vibration, resonance. These are all just words I'm using to help you understand what it is that you can't understand as now. And it always helps. There's a little crumbs. It's like, oh yeah, let's get there. The only time you're there is when you are absolutely not there. And people are like, oh man, I can't do this anymore. It's too much. And it comes from the feeling. And then you can fall back into it. And the ability to just craft anything at will. And that's just the side effects of that alchemy.
Well, I've learned a lot this conversation. Thank you so much. I think I got to be getting on with some other things. So let's wrap this up however you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And I think we got the difference between being an archaeologist and an anthropologist. Yeah. I would love to invite you back at some point so we can go deeper into the stuff that you love.
I'd be happy to do so. I'm happy to share, and I loved all the information that I learned from you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And in closing, let's ask you this question. Let's see what your answer is. What is your definition of spiritual consciousness?
Oh, gosh. I don't know if I even understand spiritual consciousness. I experience things that I don't have an explanation for. And sometimes I see things that seem beyond coincidence. And those are the moments where I think I'm part of a larger consciousness, that I'm not just me experiencing the world, that I am part of this world. And I actually sometimes I follow odd coincidences to their end. Like if I see someone I barely know in a faraway place, I think that's the universe telling me I should know that person more. The universe is trying to put us together. I should listen. So in that regard, maybe I have a inkling of it, but I would say I don't understand spiritual consciousness as much as I could or would. I don't know. I kind of like the mysteries in my life too. So yeah. I'm pretty comfortable with not knowing things.
And that's the perfection right here. This is why you say tomato, I say tomato. Over 400 podcasts, I've never got the same answer as I should not, because that is perfection right here, right now. So I want to thank you, Ed. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to continuing this conversation. And I would love to welcome you back on the podcast in the future at your convenience to go deeper into Maya.
Absolutely. Be happy to do so.
And with that, thank you. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. I am your humble servant and Sifu Daoist Master San Qing, and I'll see you in the next one, guys.